Hello, this is the sixth lesson of our literature course, and unfortunately it's the last lesson I'm going to be doing on Death of a Salesman, unless there's anything I realise that I haven't gone through. I'll say it again, I say it at the start of all of these videos, this is just to give you the tools you need to make your own opinions. I really don't want to push my opinion onto you off the text. And I think the fact that I'm doing like 5 videos per text kind of gets across the idea that I'm not trying to tell you what to write, I'm trying to allow you to come up with your own ideas. So for our last video, I'm suggesting that we go through tragedy. So look back at Aristotelian tragedy. If you haven't seen the first introductory video for the literature course, then that might be useful. But I'm going to be going through some of the aspects of Aristotelian tragedy and look at them in the context of Arthur Miller's play. Hamartia and the idea of there being a tragic hero. So the first question we need to ask is there a tragic hero in Death of a Salesman? There are valid arguments for either point of view, and I'll be careful in saying what questions came up in previous papers in case you want to use them for mocks, but this is something very much at the heart of the question that they asked our group last year. So when we consider whether or not there is a tragic hero, we need to consider, is there someone who started off as a great man or woman and because of some flaw went and had a downfall and either died or suffered significantly or lost something as a result of their tragic flaw. Their tragic flaw can also be said by using the Greek fancier word of hamartia. But then the second thing we need to consider when we're looking at hamartia is, aren't all characters deeply flawed in Death of the Salesman? It's very hard to find one character which isn't in some way, shape or form flawed. You can make the argument that Charlie and Bernard aren't flawed, but then at the same time Charlie continues to support Willy's lie. Bernard, I suppose Bernard's just a bit annoying really. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but you know, he is a bit annoying at the start. I'm sure, of course, if there were to be entire books written about these two characters, you'd find loads of flaws. So it's pretty safe to say that every single character is flawed. However, the real thing that a good literature student in this specification will ask is, what is the difference between a flaw and a tragic flaw and a hamartia? You can kind of argue that it's really dependent on what comes about as a result of the flaw, right? So Linda is flawed because she lacks I don't know, I guess courage. What really comes out as a result of it? Not much really. I mean, Willy probably would have died anyway, so you know, it's the difference really between a flaw and a tragic flaw which brings about the downfall of a great human being. Anagnoresis is far more interesting to talk about, I think. Does Willy ever learn? Is something we can consider. Does Willy ever turn around and say, this stuff that I was believing in is all nonsense, I should change my life and do something about it? I know it sounds a bit stupid the way I just said it, but there are definitely arguments that say Willy does undergo some sort of anagnoresis towards the end of the play, and so that's something you might want to engage with. Does Happy ever learn anything? Simple answer is nope. Happy does not undergo any sort of anagnoresis because he doesn't want to. He is very happy in believing the delusions that were passed on to him by his father. And therefore Happy isn't a very good contender for being our play's tragic hero because he doesn't have any real progression from start to finish. Like, sure, he does at the start of the play show some awareness of his inner flaws, but he doesn't really act on them, and it doesn't change his perspective. In fact, he's thinking in the same sort of way right at the start and in the Requiem at the end. No progression whatsoever. Charlie and Bernard, or Charlie and Bernard, they always know. Charlie and Bernard both always know the flaws of the Lehman family. They know that they're in a strong position. For example, Bernard knows that he studies hard and therefore will do well. Charlie knows that he doesn't need to be a good man or whatever, well liked, in order to be successful. Therefore, their knowledge is very much it's there. I think it's very hard to dispute that they have knowledge. Do they undergo anagnoresis though? The answer to that is probably no. They never go from not knowing to knowing. They just always know, and therefore it's kind of hard to argue that this is a trait which elevates either of them to tragic hero status. Also, neither of them suffer a downfall, so it kind of gets them out of the race. Catharsis. When we look at catharsis, it is overwhelmingly going to be focused on the Requiem. The reason for that is because the most cathartic, potentially cathartic event is the death of Willy Loman. So when we look at the reactions of each individual character, we can see two things. So first off, do they feel shocked by his death? Do they feel changed or whatever by Willy Loman's death? But secondly, does their reaction evoke some sort of catharsis within us as the audience? There are arguments either way. Again, you can argue that we almost denied catharsis on purpose, or you can argue that actually, well, Willy's death really is quite cathartic, and some of the things said by some of the characters does evoke a sense of I guess, well, obviously catharsis, but I mean a sense of us reevaluating our own place in the world and how we see ourselves and that kind of stuff. So there are arguments either way, and I think you can have a really good debate in your essays on catharsis. Also, I say also a lot, but it's just really easy. I say really a lot as well. It's easy to just string stuff together. But finally, we know that Willy's going to die. It's kind of the whole... It's the title, isn't it? Death of a Salesman. You wouldn't get any points for guessing that he's going to die at the end. Therefore, does that impact our sense of catharsis at all? Does knowing that he's going to die mean that we're less shocked when he actually does? Does the dismal tone of his life in the play affect the impact of his death? These are things which we can consider in the context of Aristotelian tragedy. Last, structure. Aristotle, he was very keen on beginning, middle and end. Very clear beginning, middle and end. He said, I mean, he wrote, he didn't say it in English either, he obviously said it in Greek, but he said a tragedy is an imitation of a complete action, therefore it must have a beginning, middle and end. Does this play have a beginning, middle and end? I don't think so. It just kind of... The best way I can describe the structure of this play is kind of like a train wreck. Really rubbish when it starts off. There's little bits of hope, just tiny bits in there, but by the end of it it's just really awful. There's not a progression, there's not a rising action, a turning point and then a falling action and then finally a downfall. It's just, you start off really low and you just get really in an awful state of affairs. Therefore, this isn't an Aristotelian tragedy in my opinion, just because of the structure, let alone all of this stuff, which I haven't even really engaged with by giving my own opinion. But just because of the structure, we need to question whether or not that this can be considered an Aristotelian tragedy. Miller obviously rejects this idea of the great man, and the dismal story, the structure of constantly going downwards, these are all attacks on Aristotle in my opinion. Please like the video if you liked it and found it useful, and subscribe to see more of my content. I hope to see you again next time. The next video is likely going to be, for literature anyway, is going to be on The Great Gatsby. So look forward to that. Bye.